A billionaire walks into her own restaurant in disguise. A young waiter gets fired in front of everyone, just for hiding his sick little sister in the back room. No one knows who is sitting in that corner booth. But she sees everything. And what she does next changes two lives forever. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The morning sun had just come up over the city when Diana Hargrove pulled into the parking lot of her own restaurant. She had not told anyone she was coming. She never did. That was the point. Diana was 54 years old. She had built Hargrove Dining Group from a single small breakfast place in Ohio into a chain of 31 restaurants spread across 8 states. She was worth a little over $2 billion. But on mornings like this one, she wore a plain gray jacket she had bought at a thrift store, a pair of worn-out shoes, and no jewelry. She tied her hair back simply and left the hotel without asking anyone to drive her. She had learned long ago that the truth of any business was not in the reports people sent her. The truth was in the details. The way a server moved across a floor at 7 in the morning. The sound of a kitchen at full speed. The expression on a customer's face when nobody thought the owner was watching. This location had been losing staff for months. 11 people had left in the last 6 months. 11 out of a team of 28. That number had kept Diana up more than once. Numbers told you what was happening. They never told you why. To find the why, you had to show up in person. She walked through the front door of Hargrove's on 5th just as the morning rush was starting to build. A server in her 40s smiled at her and said she could sit anywhere she liked. Diana chose a table in the corner with a clear view of the whole floor, ordered a black coffee, and opened a small notebook she kept in her jacket pocket. To anyone watching, she was just a woman having a quiet morning. The restaurant was busy. People moved fast. Orders went out. Plates came back. Diana watched all of it carefully, the way she always did, looking for the small things that other people stopped noticing because they were too close to them every day. That was when she noticed the boy. He was young. 19 at the most, maybe still 18. He was thin and moved quickly, with a kind of quiet focus that made him stand out from everyone else on the floor. His name tag said Noah in small neat letters. He was working a section of 6 tables on his own, keeping all of them covered, keeping all of them happy. Diana watched him talk a nervous customer through a wrong order calmly, without any drama, with the patience of someone twice his age. She watched him catch a water glass that slid toward the edge of a tray without breaking his stride. She watched him keep one eye on the table next to his section, a table that was not his, and quietly refill a water glass there when nobody else was paying attention. He was doing more than his job. He was doing it without calling attention to himself. And he was doing it well. But there was something else Diana noticed. Every 20 minutes or so, the boy disappeared. Not for long. Never more than 3 or 4 minutes. But the pattern was clear. He always checked the floor first, made sure his tables were settled, and then slipped through a door at the back of the restaurant. When he came back out, his face was always arranged a little too carefully, the expression of someone working to keep something private. Diana had been watching people work for 30 years. She knew what it looked like when someone was hiding something. She set her coffee cup down and watched more carefully. At the 40-minute mark, Noah disappeared through the back door again. Diana counted the seconds. 3 minutes and 50 seconds later, he came out. His eyes were slightly red around the edges. His jaw was set tight. He was holding himself together by force. Whatever was behind that door, it was costing him something. She was still thinking about it when the office door at the back of the restaurant opened hard. The sound cut through all the noise of the morning rush like a hand slamming a table. Everyone in the room felt it. The man who walked out was somewhere in his late 40s, wide through the chest, with the slow, confident walk of a person who had spent years enjoying the fact that other people had to listen to him. His name tag said manager, Gary Holt. He moved across the floor with his eyes already locked on Noah, and his expression said this was not a surprise. This was something he had been waiting for. Gary's voice was loud enough for the whole room to hear. He called out the boy's name and asked him what exactly he thought he was doing back there. Noah stopped. He turned slowly. His face went a little pale but his voice stayed even. He said he was just checking on something and Mr. Holt cut him off immediately. Gary said he was abandoning his section during the morning rush. He said he knew it was not the first time that week. He said he knew what Noah had back there. He said he knew about the sister. The room went very quiet. Noah asked quietly if they could talk about this somewhere private. Gary said no. He said if Noah wanted to explain himself, he could do it right there in front of everyone. He told Noah to tell the whole room why he thought it was acceptable to bring a sick child into a food service restaurant without permission. Noah stood still for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and steady. He was not begging. He was simply explaining the truth. He said his sister was 9 years old and had a fever of 103. Her school had called him at 5:30 that morning. Their grandmother was 76 and did not drive. He had called 5 people before his shift and nobody could come on short notice. He did not have a car. He could not afford to miss that day because it would have been his 3rd absence that month, and the policy said 3 absences meant automatic termination. He said his sister was sitting in the far corner of the back storage room with a blanket and a bottle of water. She was nowhere near the food prep area. He had made absolutely certain of that. He said he just needed to get through the day. Nobody in the restaurant was eating anymore. Everyone was watching. Gary said he did not care where she was sitting. He said bringing a minor into a commercial kitchen without authorization was a health code issue, a liability issue, and a violation of company policy. He told Noah Sullivan that he was terminated effective right now. He told him to collect his things, take his sister, and get out of his restaurant. The silence after those words was complete. Noah did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He stood there for one moment with his jaw tight and his eyes very still. Then he said quietly that he needed that day's pay. He said he had groceries to buy for that night. Gary told him he should have thought about that before he turned the storage room into a nursery. He gave him 5 minutes to clear out. Noah walked toward the back of the restaurant with his head up. Diana had already set her notebook down on the table. She was watching the door. He came back out less than a minute later. He was carrying a little girl. She was small. 9 years old, but small for her age, with the same dark eyes as her brother and a face that was deeply flushed from the fever. She was wrapped in a thin school jacket that was not warm enough for the morning air outside. Her head rested on Noah's shoulder with the complete heaviness of a sick child who had used up all her energy. She held on to her brother with both hands. An older man near the window said, loudly and clearly, that someone in this room ought to be ashamed of themselves. He was looking at Gary Holt when he said it. Noah said quietly to the room that her name was Maya. He said she was 9. He said she did not like loud voices when she was sick. He walked past Gary without looking at him. He walked past the staff, some of whom were looking at the floor. He walked past Diana's table. For just 1 second, their eyes met. Diana saw everything in that look. The exhaustion of someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. The fear of a person watching the last thing holding them together begin to fall apart. The desperate, quiet pride of someone who had decided that whatever happened today, they would not break in public. She had seen that face before. She had worn that face before. Noah pushed through the front door and walked out into the cold morning air, his sick sister in his arms, with nowhere to go. Diana sat still for 30 more seconds. Then she stood up, put a $10 bill on the table, and walked directly across the floor to where Gary Holt was standing near the register with the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had just handled something correctly. She said "Excuse me" in a voice that was pleasant and completely calm. She told him she needed his full name and his official title at this location. Gary looked at her. He took in the plain jacket, the simple hair, the worn shoes. He placed her in a category in his mind and found her unimportant. He told her his name and said if she had a complaint about what just happened, there was a form on the company website. Diana said his name back to him the way a person says a name when checking it against a document. She said he was the manager at this location, employed with Hargrove Dining Group for 6 years, transferred here from the Lakewood location 18 months ago. She said 11 employees had left this location in the past 6 months. She asked if those numbers sounded accurate to him. The color left Gary's face quickly. He asked her who she was. Diana reached into her jacket pocket and set her business card on the counter between them. She watched him read it. Diana Hargrove. Founder and CEO, Hargrove Dining Group. She told him she owned the company. She told him he was terminated effective immediately. She said her HR director would contact him within the hour. She asked him to leave the premises now. Gary opened his mouth. He said something about rights and procedures. Diana let him finish. Then she told him, calmly and without raising her voice, that there was documentation of a pattern of conduct at this location and at his previous location that had been raised to HR twice without any action taken. That failure, she said, was also being addressed today. He left. He was not quiet about it. Diana turned to the staff. She asked who the senior server was. A woman named Sandra raised her hand. Diana told Sandra she was in charge of the floor for the rest of the service, that someone from corporate would be in touch before noon, and that everyone should get back to work. She thanked them for their patience. Then she sat back down at her corner table and picked up her phone. It took Diana's assistant 2 hours and 20 minutes to compile everything. Diana sat in the restaurant and read through it all as it came in. Noah James Sullivan, age 19. Hired 9 weeks ago. No disciplinary record before that week. 2 warnings for tardiness, both from Gary Holt, both in the last 10 days. The pattern was familiar. His parents, Robert and Ellen Sullivan, had been killed in a car accident the previous January. Robert was 41. Ellen was 39. Noah had been 18 years old at the time, finishing his last semester of high school. His sister Maya was 8 years old when the accident happened. She had turned 9 in March. Noah had filed for legal guardianship of Maya 6 weeks after the accident. Courts had granted it 2 months later. He had withdrawn his application from a 2-year business program at the community college the same week the guardianship was finalized. He had graduated high school in June and started applying for full-time work immediately. Hargroves had hired him in early July. He was 19 years old. He had been a legal guardian, a full-time worker, and the only family his sister had for less than a year. He was doing all of it at the same time and he had been doing it alone. His employment application had a section for additional information. He had written 1 sentence. He said he was the legal guardian of his sister Maya Sullivan, age 9. He said he was dependable and he worked hard. He asked only for understanding on school pickup days when possible. No explanation of everything he was carrying. No request for sympathy. Just the fact and the simple ask. Diana set her phone down and looked out the window for a long time. She called him at 2 in the afternoon. He answered on the second ring, his voice cautious and tired. She told him her name and that she owned the company that ran the restaurant where he had worked that morning. She told him she had been there when it happened. She said she would like to speak with him in person if he was willing. A silence. Then he asked if this was about something legal because he said he had not done anything wrong and Maya had not been near the food. Diana told him he was not in trouble. She told him he had done nothing wrong. She told him Gary Holt had been terminated and would not return to that restaurant. She asked if he would meet with her the following morning. She said no pressure, no strings, just a conversation. Another silence. He asked her why she would want to do that. She told him because what happened to him that morning was wrong. And because a long time ago, when she was young and had nothing and no one to turn to, a woman had done something similar for her. She said she had spent every year since then trying to earn what that woman had given her. He came. He arrived the next morning at 9 o'clock at a small cafe 2 blocks from the restaurant. He was wearing a clean shirt. Maya walked in beside him, holding his hand. She was much better than the day before. Her cheeks had lost most of the fever flush and her eyes were bright. She was carrying a small stuffed rabbit under one arm with the focused grip of a child who goes nowhere without her most important thing. Diana was already at the table. She stood when they came in. She thanked him for coming. She looked down and asked who he had brought with him. He said her name was Maya. There was a quiet steadiness in the way he said it that told Diana a great deal about the last 11 months. Diana said hello to Maya and said the rabbit looked like a very good one. She asked if the rabbit had a name. Maya looked at her with the serious, direct gaze of a 9-year-old conducting an important evaluation. She said the rabbit's name was Clover. She said Clover liked tea parties but not loud music. Diana said that was very specific and she liked that about her. Maya appeared to decide this was an acceptable answer. She climbed into the booth beside her brother and accepted the hot chocolate and small plate of pastries that Diana had arranged to be waiting. She settled Clover against the sugar jar and set about the pastries with the focused hunger of a child whose fever had broken and whose appetite had remembered itself. Diana and Noah sat across from each other. Diana told him that Gary Holt was permanently gone from the company. She said what had happened the morning before, the public nature of it, the way Gary had spoken to him, firing him for trying to take care of his family, was not what this company stood for. Noah nodded once. He was waiting for the part that came after. Diana told him she had reviewed his file and looked at some public records before she called him. She said she knew about his parents and that she was very sorry. Something moved through his face. Not quite pain. More like the expression of someone who has been bracing for a long time and finds, unexpectedly, that what arrives is not what they were bracing against. She told him she had watched him work for almost an hour the morning before. She talked about the way he managed his tables, the way he handled a complaint without drama, the way he had been covering the adjacent section without being asked and without making anything of it. She said she had been in this business for 30 years and that kind of instinct was not something you could train into a person. Either it was there or it was not. In him, it was there. She slid a folder across the table and offered him the assistant manager position at this location. She walked him through it carefully. The salary. The benefits, including full health coverage for him and for Maya, dental, vision, and paid time off. The schedule built around school hours. The path to a full manager position after 6 months. She was specific because she knew vague promises meant nothing to someone who had learned that systems could fail without warning. Noah looked at the folder. He did not open it right away. He looked at Maya, who was finishing her hot chocolate with both hands wrapped around the mug and Clover propped carefully beside it. He watched his sister for a long moment. When he looked back at Diana, something had changed in his face. The careful surface had shifted into something more honest. He said he appreciated it and meant that sincerely. But he said he needed to be honest with her. He took a slow breath. He said assistant manager meant longer hours. It meant being the person who got called at 10 at night when something broke down. It meant staying late when a shift fell apart. He said he got Maya up at 6:15 every morning, walked her to school, worked, picked her up, made dinner, helped with her homework, got her to bed, and set everything up for the next morning. He said that was every single day and there was no room in it for more responsibility. He said if he took on more and started dropping things, Maya was the one who would pay for it. He said it plainly and without self-pity. That somehow made it harder to hear. He said she had already lost everything. He said he would not let her lose him being there. Maya looked up from her hot chocolate and asked if Clover could have a pastry. Noah told her Clover could have half of hers. Maya considered this with great seriousness and said that was fair, and carefully broke a small pastry in half. Diana watched this small exchange. The automatic ease of it. The way Maya leaned slightly toward her brother, the way a plant leans toward light. She understood with complete clarity what she was actually looking at. This was not a boy who did not want opportunity. This was a boy who had wanted it so badly, and had needed to survive so urgently, that he had taught himself not to want it anymore. Because wanting something you have told yourself you cannot have is its own kind of ongoing pain. Diana asked if she could tell him something. He said sure. She told him that when she was 22 years old, she was waiting tables at a diner in Cincinnati. She had no money, no plan, and no family close enough to call. A woman named Ruth Albright owned the diner, and 6 weeks after she hired Diana, she offered her a shift supervisor position. More responsibility, more hours, more pay. Diana turned it down. She told Ruth she was not ready. What she did not say, and barely admitted to herself, was that she was terrified. If she took on more and failed, she would lose the only stable thing she had found. So she stayed small. She thought she was being sensible. A few weeks later she watched Ruth spend a whole evening interviewing 5 people for a front desk position, and she remembered thinking she could do that better than any of them. And the only reason she was watching instead of sitting in that chair was because she had talked herself out of it. Noah said quietly that was not the same thing. He said Diana had been protecting herself. He said he was protecting Maya. Diana said yes. And she asked him to think carefully about how much alike those two things actually were. She asked him to open the folder, not the job offer page but the second section. He opened it. She walked him through everything in the second section slowly and specifically. The Hargrove Employee Support Fund. The Childcare Partnership Network, 3 licensed providers within a mile of the restaurant with subsidized rates available through the fund, including emergency availability for early morning calls from school. The Emergency Financial Assistance Provision. The flexible scheduling policy for single-parent employees and legal guardians. She had printed the actual documents with actual dollar amounts and actual contact names because she knew a list of programs meant nothing until you could see the real structure of it. Noah read the childcare section twice. He looked up and asked if the emergency availability was real. Diana said 3 certified providers within a mile of that location and the fund covered up to 80% of the cost. She said yes, it was real. Noah looked at his sister. He called her name. Maya looked up. He said she knew how sometimes in the morning when he had to leave early and they needed someone to be with her. Maya said she meant like the neighbor next door. He said like that, but that there were people who did that as their job and there was a way for them to afford it. Maya asked if the people would know about animals. Noah said they could find out before they decided anything. Maya gave a small nod indicating this was a reasonable approach and returned to Clover and the pastry. Noah looked back at Diana. Something in his face had opened slightly. The door that had been firmly shut had moved a little. He asked what would happen if he took the job and it fell apart in a month. What if she had read him wrong and he failed and Maya ended up worse off than she was right now? Diana told him then they would find out what went wrong and figure out what he needed. She said she was not betting on perfection. She was betting on the person she had watched the morning before. The person who, when the worst thing possible happened to his family, did not leave. He stayed. He figured it out one day at a time for 11 months, alone. She said that was not luck. That was character. She said his parents had raised him to do exactly what he was doing for Maya, and she did not believe they would call it selfish for him to also build something for himself. She thought they would call it exactly right. The silence stretched out. Maya set Clover very carefully in the center of the table. She called her brother's name. He said yeah. She asked if this was the lady who wanted to help them. He looked at his sister for a long moment. He said yeah, she was. Maya looked at Diana with the direct, careful gaze of a 9-year-old who takes important decisions seriously. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied, and picked up Clover again. Noah looked back at Diana. He said if he took the job and Maya needed him, if the school called or she was sick or anything happened, he was going to go, every time. Diana said every single time, and she would put it in writing. He said he wanted to be home by 6:30 most nights. She said they would build the schedule around that as the starting point. He was quiet for a moment. Then he straightened the folder, set it square in front of him, and extended his hand across the table. He said okay. He would try. Diana shook his hand and told him that was all anyone could ever really do. 3 days later, Noah Sullivan walked through the back door of Hargrove's on 5th at 5:45 in the morning, 15 minutes before his official start time, in a new assistant manager's shirt with his name stitched in clean dark thread on the chest. The weekend had moved fast. He had read every page of the folder on Friday night after Maya was asleep. He had called Diana on Saturday morning with 7 specific questions and she had answered all 7. By Saturday afternoon, he had spoken to 2 of the childcare providers in the network and scheduled a visit to meet them with Maya on Sunday. Sunday had gone well. Maya had approved of both providers but had favored the second one, a warm woman named Gloria who had 2 cats and a large collection of stuffed animals and who had known, without being told, the correct pronunciation of Clover's name. Maya had reported on the drive home that Gloria had just known, and she had not even had to tell her, with the gravity of someone who has applied a thorough test and found the results satisfactory. The health coverage was being processed. The childcare arrangement was confirmed. The Emergency Assistance Fund had approved a grant to cover 2 months of rent while Noah's finances stabilized. All of it was real, documented, and specific. Noah had checked everything twice because he had learned in 11 months that hope was most useful when it was also verifiable. The senior server, a woman named Sandra who had been at the location for 5 years, looked up from the morning prep checklist when Noah came in. Her expression was professionally neutral, the expression of someone who had decided to watch before forming a judgment. Noah understood that. He would have done the same thing. He gathered the morning crew and stood in front of them. He had been up until midnight thinking about what to say. Every version that sounded smooth had felt wrong when he tested it against the reality of these people, all of whom had been here longer than he had and every one of whom had the right to be skeptical. He decided to tell the truth. He said he knew the situation was strange. He said he knew some of them had seen what happened on Thursday and had questions about how he had ended up in this shirt. He said he was not going to pretend it made complete sense from where they were standing because it did not. He looked at each of them in turn. He said what he could tell them was that he was going to work harder than anyone else in that building. He was going to get things wrong. When he did, he wanted to hear about it because they knew things about that place that he did not know yet and he was going to need those things. He asked them to give him 30 days, watch what he actually did, and judge him on that. The silence that followed was the silence of people deciding. Sandra said back to work then, and turned toward the floor. The first week was hard. Not because of the physical work. Noah had been working hard his whole life. What was hard was the constant awareness that every small decision he made was being quietly measured by people who had not yet decided whether to trust him. He made mistakes. He sent a food order to the wrong table. He miscounted a till and had to recount it in front of the counter staff. He made a call on a customer complaint that Sandra corrected with pointed precision. He did not make excuses. He did not look rattled. He took each correction, reset himself, and kept moving. Sandra noticed. She did not say anything directly, but he caught her eye across the floor once during a quiet stretch and she gave him a brief short nod. Not approval exactly. More like acknowledgement. The nod of someone who had noted something and filed it away. On his 4th day, Noah submitted a facilities request to fix the broken hinge on the walk-in cooler door that had been requiring 2 hands and a full shoulder to open every morning. On his 5th day, he submitted a second request for anti-fatigue mats at the prep stations after he noticed the longest-serving cook, a quiet man named Earl, had been shifting his weight at the end of every shift and trying not to show it. The mats arrived on day 9. Earl said nothing to Noah directly. But the following week, a regular customer asked Earl how his back was doing. Earl said better, that management had finally sorted it, and went back to his grill. Noah happened to be close enough to hear it. He filed it away as what it was, Earl's version of a thank you, offered in Earl's own time and in Earl's own language. On the 15th day, Noah redesigned the work schedule. He had spent 3 evenings building it from scratch. No more than 2 consecutive closing shifts per person. 2 guaranteed days off per week for everyone. The whole thing printed clearly and posted in the break room where any staff member could read and verify it at any time. A server named Marcus stood in front of the new schedule for almost a full minute when it went up. Then he said quietly that fare was different from what he was used to there, and he walked away. He showed up on time the next morning. In Marcus's language, that was a form of agreement. The conversation that mattered most came on the 22nd day. Sandra found Noah in the supply room during a slow stretch of the afternoon. Her voice was direct and her eyes were steady, the manner of someone who has been building toward a question for a while and has finally decided the time has come. She said 5 years. 5 years of solid reviews and never a write-up, and 2 regional supervisors who told her she had management potential. And he was there after 9 weeks. She held his gaze and said she needed him to be honest with her about why. Noah did not look away. He said what had happened was not fair to her. He said he could not change that. What he could do was make sure that starting now, the door she had been standing in front of for 5 years was actually open. Not as a gesture. As a real thing. He said she had been watching the opening walkthroughs for the past week and to keep going. He said to come to him in 60 days and show him what she had learned. He said he was not handing her anything. He was telling her the path was real. Sandra looked at him for a long time. Then she said 60 days and walked out. That evening, Noah sat at the kitchen table after Maya was in bed. Clover was on the chair beside him, which was where Maya always left her when she wanted Clover to keep Noah company. He opened his notebook and wrote down everything he had observed that day. Names. Things to follow up on. 1 line at the bottom, underlined. 3 mistakes today. Do not make the same ones twice. His phone buzzed. A message from Diana Hargrove. She asked how week 3 was going. He looked at it for a moment. Then he typed back that it was harder than almost anything he had done lately. But he thought it was going to work. Her response came in under 2 minutes. She said she never doubted it and to get some sleep. Noah set his phone down and looked around the kitchen. The apartment that had felt so fragile and temporary for so long felt, for the first time in 11 months, like something that was actually going to hold. 9 months after that first morning, Diana Hargrove walked into Hargrove's on 5th on a Tuesday afternoon and sat down at the same corner table she had chosen the very first time. The neon sign in the window had been fixed. The parking lot had been repaved. The booths had new cushions. Small things. The kind that never made it into reports but that you noticed when you were paying attention. The floor ran the way a well-run floor runs. Not with the nervous energy of a place performing for an observer, but with the quiet, assured confidence of a place where people know their work and believe it matters and trust the person beside them to do their part. Sandra was working the floor as assistant manager now, official title and official pay, effective 6 weeks ago. She moved with the grounded authority of someone who had been preparing for 5 years without fully knowing it was counting. When she caught Diana's eye from across the room, she gave a brief professional nod that contained, if you knew how to read it, a great deal of quiet satisfaction. Earl looked up from the pass-through when Diana came in. He gave her a single nod. Diana had come to understand that this particular nod from Earl meant things are good in here, and I think you already know it. Noah came out of the office with a tablet and the focused calm of someone who had learned over 9 months of daily practice that problems were manageable if you saw them early enough. He sat down across from her. Diana asked how he thought it was going. He said better than month 1 in most ways. He said customer satisfaction was up 18%. Staff turnover had been 0 for 4 months. The food waste number had come down 7% after he changed the ordering system in month 3. He said Sandra had run a full Saturday service on her own the previous month when he had to take Maya to the doctor, and she had not called him once with a question she could not answer herself. He said she was ready for everything they had given her. Diana said she knew. She told him she had spoken with Sandra the week before. He nodded. Then he was quiet for a moment. He said there was something else he wanted to talk to her about. He pulled out a second folder, his own, not hers. She could see it was full of notes and printed pages covered in his handwriting in the margins. He said he had been looking at 4 other Hargrove locations in the region. He had visited 3 of them on his days off over the past 2 months. He said he wanted to show her what he had found. Diana looked at the folder. She looked at him. He was 19 years old, birthday not until February, sitting across from her with a regional assessment built on 9 months of daily work and the clearest instinct for what made a team either hold together or fall apart that she had encountered in 30 years of running restaurants. She thought of Ruth Albright. She thought of what it meant to bet on someone. She thought of how the only way to truly honor a debt like that was to pass it forward into something worth having. She told him to show her. He did. It was specific, honest, and built entirely around the people at each location, their particular situations, their particular obstacles, their particular potential. It was not a management theory. It was a plan written by someone who had learned through direct experience what the difference was between a place where people were seen and a place where they were not. When he finished, Diana folded her hands on the table and asked him what he wanted to do about it. He said he wanted to help fix it. Not from this restaurant. From inside those locations. He asked her to give him a regional role and 6 months. He said he would apply what they had built at this location to those 4 others. He said he would keep taking his courses, that he was registered for business operations and financial management in the spring. He said he was not asking to skip the learning. He was asking to do it alongside the work, the way he had been doing it. She studied him. She thought about the woman who had taken her in at 22, who had said once that the only real test of what you believe is what you do when there is nothing in it for you and nobody watching. She thought about what it meant to build people. About what building people was actually for. She offered him a regional manager role covering 5 locations including this one, with 6 months to start and direct reporting to her with a weekly check-in. She asked about Maya. She said more responsibility meant longer hours and some travel. She asked what that looked like for her. He had anticipated this. He said he had talked it over with Gloria and that Gloria was willing to cover extended hours when travel was needed and the fund covered it. He said Maya was stable. She had school. She had friends. She had Gloria and the cats. He paused for a moment and then said that Maya had told him the week before that she wanted to work in restaurants when she grew up. Specifically, she wanted to be his assistant. Diana laughed. The real kind, without any performance in it. She said then they had a deal and extended her hand across the table. Noah shook it. The expression on his face in that moment was one Diana recognized completely. She had worn it herself once, in a small diner in Cincinnati, when a woman named Ruth Albright had looked at her across a table and offered her something real. The look of someone being given something true that they still cannot quite fully believe is actually meant for them. He thanked her for all of it. She told him to thank Ruth Albright. She said she was passing it forward and asked him to do the same. Noah drove home that evening in the used car he had bought 3 months ago with his first real savings. Maya was at Gloria's. He called her on the way. She told him that one of Gloria's cats had sat on her lap for 20 minutes and that Gloria said the cat did not do that for everyone. She said it with the tone of someone reporting a significant personal achievement. Noah told her that was a big deal. Maya said she knew and that she had been very still. Then she asked him quietly if they were okay. He had been waiting for her to ask that for 11 months. She asked it every few weeks, in her own way, at her own time, the way children ask the questions that matter most, sideways and quietly and in the middle of something else. He told her yeah. He said they were okay. He said they were more than okay. A small silence. Then she asked if they could have pasta tonight. He said yes. They could have pasta tonight. He picked her up from Gloria's. They made pasta together, Maya standing on her step stool at the counter and stirring with great seriousness while Clover supervised from the windowsill. They ate together at the kitchen table with the evening light coming in through the window. Maya told him about the cats and a book she was reading and a girl at school named Priya who had the same kind of rabbit as Clover, and Noah listened to all of it and asked questions and laughed in the right places. After Maya was in bed and the apartment was quiet, Noah sat at the kitchen table with his notebook open and his phone beside him. He thought about a morning 11 months ago when he had walked out of a restaurant into the cold air with Maya in his arms and nowhere to go and nothing left that looked like a next step. He thought about a woman in a plain gray jacket sitting in a corner booth, watching, deciding something. He thought about his parents. About his father who had believed that your real character was what you did when nothing was in it for you. About his mother who had believed that the whole foundation of anything worth building was showing up for the people who needed you, consistently, without excuses, no matter what. He opened a new page in his notebook and wrote at the top, what we actually believe. He had been thinking about it for months. A training program, not a manual of rules and procedures, but something real, built around the idea that the people who worked in a restaurant were full human beings with full lives outside of it. That seeing them that way was not charity. It was just good sense. That the employee support fund should be the first thing a new person learned about, not something they found out by accident when they were already in crisis. That the kind of manager Hargroves needed was not someone who had memorized the operations handbook, but someone who had learned how to look. He wrote for an hour. The apartment was still. Outside, the street was quiet. Ordinary traffic. Ordinary city sounds. A dog somewhere. A door. The small, unhurried texture of a normal evening. All of it ordinary. All of it, completely and irreplaceably, his. He closed the notebook. He checked on Maya, still asleep, Clover tucked under her arm, her face peaceful and young and completely at rest. He stood in the doorway for a moment the way he had learned to do in January, just to make sure the world was still in order. It was. He went to bed.